Our first speaker has been everywhere in the past fortnight. Television, including on the ABC 7:30 last week and Channel 9's A Current Affair last night. She's been in the print media, she's been on radio, everywhere in the last fortnight. She's an Alice Springs Town Councillor, and I'm pleased to say she's also a Research Associate at the Centre for Independent Studies. Ladies and gentlemen, Jacinta Price.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, everyone. I'll try to do as much as I can in 5 minutes. 26th of January 1788. Why should we keep the date? Well, firstly, 1788, 26th of January, was the day the British, came to this country and came and made contact with the First Nations people, Aboriginal people of this country. For me, this is significant for me personally because my mother is a Warrabri woman, my father is a white Australian man, and I consider myself a product of reconciliation of this country. If the 26th of January 1788 had not occurred, well, I wouldn't stand here in front of you. I would simply not exist. The argument that has been put forward is that this particular day marks the day that genocide began in this country, that colonisation began in this country, dispossession of land began in this country. And while much of this is true, I do not believe that ignoring such a significant date in our history helps us to anyway recognise our history in its entirety and help us to move forward from this date. Much of what occurred in our country's history occurred after this date, the decades that followed. And this is what I think we need to definitely recognise. One issue that has come forward, which I think is positive from the debate around change the date, is the fact that we as Australians don't know enough of our country's history, and that we do need to learn more of our country's history in its entirety. So the massacres took place following this particular date. One massacre which is very close to home for me and my family is the Coniston massacre, which took place in 1928. My grandfather was an adolescent when this massacre occurred, and he had fled from where the killings were taking place. I have family members who have told me about escaping, how they escaped and how they are survivors of this particular massacre. 2 generations ago, this occurred in my family. Now, after 75 years, we held a commemorative ceremony for this particular massacre. And my family wanted to invite the descendants of those who killed our family, who included both white and as well as native policemen. Now, in fact, one of the most brutal killers of our family members was a native policeman, an Arrernte man by the name of Paddy Tracker. He had been known to tie up and rape our women before murdering them, and he was also known for brutally killing children. So we recognise this in our history, but we do not hold the Arrernte nation responsible for what happened. In fact, there are many Arrernte who are our family. So why should we hold the rest of white Australia responsible for what occurred all those years ago that they have nothing, in fact, to do with? Just like the Arrernte are our family, white people are my family as well. We are all Australians. So we invited the descendants who killed our people to this commemorative ceremony. Now, not all of them could make it. One did, but we stood with her. She was held and embraced. Our old people cried on her shoulder and told her that we do not hold you responsible for literally what your grandfather did to our people, but we want to recognise that these were really tough times in our history. But we want to move forward together, and we want to do it with you as Australians, as one people. The act of forgiveness is what our family chose to move forward with. And in my view, I believe this to be the best act of reconciliation, the deepest act of reconciliation that has occurred in this country. And yet again, not many Australians know about this. because we don't know about our country's history. We don't know about the relationships that were formed in love between white Australians and Aboriginal Australians, or in fact, people of ethnic backgrounds, different ethnic backgrounds, and Aboriginal people in this country. We don't know enough about that. But we need to know, we need to learn, just as we need to learn about the atrocities that took place within our nation's history. We need to take the good and the bad. As individuals, there are parts of our own personal history that are bad. There are things that we have done as individuals that are bad. There are also things that we have done as individuals that are good. But in order to fully accept ourselves as who we are as human beings, we need to take the good and the bad with us. As a nation, we need to do that. We need to recognise the good and the bad and to move forward together as a unified nation, starting with the most significant date in our history, which is January 26, 1788, which I might also add, in 1949 was the date we all became Australian citizens as well as British subjects. Hence why we have citizenship ceremonies on this particular day. And we must not forget the over 300,000 migrants who themselves became citizens on this day. We are all together in this. We're a mixed bag, but the only way that we can improve the lives of the most marginalised and the lives of general everyday Australians is if we in fact do this together as one. And I believe we can do so and still maintain Australia Day on the 26th of January. So thank you.
Our next speaker is an academic and commentator of Indigenous affairs. He appears frequently in the Daily Telegraph newspaper and also the Spectator magazine, which I used to edit. And also he's been affiliated with Australian Catholic University and the University of Western Sydney and of course the Centre for Independent Studies. Ladies and gentlemen, Anthony Dillon.
Thank you very much, CIS and my fellow panellists. You want to do the booing and hissing? Now's the time to do it. Get it out. And I can get on with my speech. Okay, look, I'm here to talk about, I'm going to give a psychological perspective here. First of all, if we want to change the day because there's a better day that reflects history, that's fine. I'm all for that. But when people say, oh, we should change the day because the current day is hurting people and people are hurt by it, no, they're not. I'm not denying that people aren't hurt. They may be hurt, but it's not caused by the date. Now let me explain this. If I tell a joke that's considered crude, there'll be some people here that will laugh, there'll be some people who take offence. The joke doesn't go out and decide which ones are going to be offended. People make that choice themselves. The joke itself has no power. People make choices. Offence is always taken. And let me tell you how this starts. Imagine you've got a young child in the supermarket with its mother, starts crying, I want a lolly, I want a lolly. Mother says no, cries louder. Mother gives in, gives the lolly. The child knows next time what to do. Be upset and I'll get the lolly. The alternative strategy is what I do with my child. She'd cry, I'd say, darling, is that the loudest you can cry? Cry louder for me. She very quickly learnt being upset, being offended wasn't going to work with me. Let me extend that a bit further. Child grows up, you have a man, he's been questioned about his whereabouts by his girlfriend. He gets angry and he says, you make me upset. No, she doesn't cause him to be upset. Being upset is simply just a strategy. He has learnt to shut up his partner to get his own way. We do choose offence, we do choose to be upset, all for the sake of getting something to happen. And so it is with this Australia Day debate. Yes, there are people who are offended, upset, but it's done to achieve a purpose. It gets attention. To be offended is to feel important, and also it's a great big distraction from the issues that have already been discussed here, but those serious issues, violence, kids not being in school, unemployment, child abuse, all that sort of thing. It's a huge distraction, and people like to play the offence game on Australia Day and the lead up to it because it's a nice, convenient distraction from those problems which we don't really feel comfortable talking about. Now, we know, just to reinforce my point, there are many, many Aboriginal people who just get on with Australia Day. They have a great time. They're not offended by it, so therefore the day is not causing offence. It doesn't travel through the air and offend some people and not offend others. It is a choice. And as I said, I'll repeat this again. To be offended is done for a purpose, and that purpose is it brings attention. It displaces responsibility. You're no longer responsible. Well, I screwed up, I did bad because this nation is still celebrating Australia Day on the 26th of January. It's a nice, convenient excuse. That's nonsense. I'll just summarise by saying, yeah, if we are going to change the date, and it probably will be changed, let's do it for the right reason. Because if we do it for the wrong reason of, oh, well, it's hurtful, it upsets some Aboriginal people, we then know that next time they want something, just be upset, be offended. You know, where will it end? We've had the apology, the Prime Minister's apology. That was supposed to bring all this healing. It never happened. All it does was bring a short flash of pleasure to people, some warm, fuzzy feelings just for a few seconds. Next day, everything was back to normal. What else is bugging me about this change the date is we have those people saying, you know, they give the analogy, if, you know, someone come and murdered your parents, took your house, blah, 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 etc. Not a very good analogy because we're talking about things that happened generations ago, and we are never ever victims of the past, but only ever victims of our view of the past, which indeed many thousands of Aboriginal people have demonstrated. So I think by leaving the date as it is, it demonstrates that Aboriginal people are a strong, powerful group of people. And when we do that, we then can get on with the business of fixing the real problems. Having said all that, if the date just does change, and it turns out that people are happy and they're no longer suffering or being oppressed on that day and they're not complaining about something else, I'll be the first to say I was wrong and I'm glad it was changed.